the real Jeff, he called me a couple weeks ago and he said he had seen the movie poster. And he was like, where'd you get that idea? And I was like, well, I built the toy store and I was setting up a shot and Channing just came around the corner and he looked like that. So I filmed him. And he said, that makes me really happy because if you live in a toy store for 6 months, it has a way to bring out your inner child. And he was like, I'm really happy Channing got in touch with his.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, a criminal on the run hides on the roof of a toy store in director Derek Cianfrance's dramedy, Roofman. The film tells the true story of Jeffrey Manchester, a charismatic criminal who goes into hiding on the roof of a Toys R Us. Adopting a new identity, he begins to form a relationship with one of the employees, jeopardizing his double life as his past closes in. In addition to Roofman, Cianfrance's other directorial credits include the feature films The Light Between Oceans, The Place Beyond the Pines, and Blue Valentine, and episodes of the TV miniseries I Know This Much Is True. He won the 2016 DGA Award for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Commercials for his Squarespace ad, Manifesto. Following a screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Cianfrance spoke with director David Gordon Green about filming Roofman. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
Hi.
Hi.
This is exciting. Derek and I were just talking. We just met for the very first time, but we've talked on the phone a few times, which is cool.
And we sat next to each other in a movie.
And we sat next to each other once in a
movie.
movie.
In the dark.
So that's pretty fun. So many things to think about, talk about. First of all, I really wanted to applaud you for making a great. I live in South Carolina. I used to live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and watching a movie that kind of respectfully and beautifully portrays a very different culture than you see a lot of portraits of in movies and Southern filmmaking and things like that. So, and I have a lot of friends that worked on the movie and respect you and the way that you approached it all, and I think that's really cool. So yeah, I was excited to see this movie in a way that for me, it was triggering a lot of 70s anti-hero movies like Dog Day Afternoon or Scarecrow, which is one of my favorite kind of underappreciated movies. The Al Pacino, Gene Hackman movie, the Jerry Schatzberg movie has that sensitive vulnerability, humor, emotion, anxiety, beauty of parenthood caught in the knots of character. So I wanted to say how cool that is to also be woven in with some wish fulfillment. Like, who doesn't want to fucking live in a Toys R Us?
Right? Yeah. I mean, I made this movie when I was like turning 50. It was kind of like a midlife crisis I was having. And you could buy like a Ferrari or maybe build a toy store, so that was my choice.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, I also think, knowing Derek's work for a long time, actually when Blue Valentine was made, a friend of mine was working at, was it Miramax at the time, right? And she was in publicity. She said, I just saw a movie that you need to see. So she set up a private screening of me to see the movie in advance. And I was blown away by it and see a lot of threads, Andre the DP, and some of the threads of cinematography and long lens and zooms that I love so much. But then at the same time, there is levity, humor, something that we haven't experienced in your work before. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. The whole entire crew, just on this like midlife crisis theme, I got my entire crew from Blue Valentine back. So Andre, the DP, Inbal Weinberg, production designer, Aaron Bennick, the costume designer, all three of my producers, Jamie Patrickoff, Lynette Howell, Alex Orlovsky, my editors, Jim Helton, Ron Patain, my set still photographer, Davi Russo, my hair and makeup people, Bobby Deal and Leo Wan. We just went, Christopher Bear, who did the score, who was with Grizzly Bear. Basically, I just wanted to get the family back together and make a movie that we could just, all love together. My history, my movies, they've been kind of heavy. I think I've been just interested in like tragedy. And it's because my imagination goes very dark, but I'm like a very positive, my consciousness is very positive. And I came out of my last thing that I made, I know this much is true, and I felt like I had like reached some sort of catharsis with all that. You know, I'd felt like I had said everything I needed to say about the same thing I was saying in every movie, which was something about like legacy and ancestry and inheritance and the things we pass on. And I felt like I didn't need to repeat myself again. So I was looking for something, and I heard this story about this guy who had robbed 45 McDonald's, but gave people their, jackets before he put them in the freezer. And then he went to prison for 45 years. And, when he escaped prison, it's not like he was Rambo and he lived in the woods. He picked a toy store. And I was like, well, this is some interesting choices. And so I started talking to him. And, he's in a maximum security prison in Raleigh, North Carolina. So I had maybe 400 hours of phone calls with him over the last 4.5 years. And I just, he started calling me Dr. Derek. He said he would lay down when I would talk to him so he could get his head shrunk. And it was just, the things he was saying were, it sounded, he loves movies. And I think when he was living his life, he was imagining he was the star of his own movie. And so he was doing these things that were kind of, I always, one of the first things I thought of with him was like, if he was going to kill an ant, he'd use the sledgehammer. Like he overdoes everything that he does in life. And there was a point though where I was like thinking about like, is this real? So I tried to talk to everyone else in his life. So I talked to his mom, his brother, the police that arrested him, the judge that sentenced him to 45 years, the correctional officers, his girlfriend Lee, the pastor of the church, and they all validated what he had been, the tall tales he'd been telling me. And I don't know, I just was thinking like in terms of tone, you were saying like it's different than my other tone, like some more levity in it. My wife is a comedian and I'm tragedy, but like I said, I'm like more like comedians are kind of, they can get very serious in real life. And for me is like doing tragedy. I'm more fun loving. And I was thinking that comedy and tragedy are flip sides of the same coin. And I was thinking that maybe I could flip that coin in the air and you could see both faces, at once. And this movie could kind of go back and forth between that.
And you can see it in this, like, I just love that he's having an emotional outrage to a Tickle Me Elmo doll. So, or he's getting arrested and there's balloons in his hands. There's always like that kind of strange comedy tragedy juxtaposition that I love, the awkward emotion of not knowing, and not being told by a filmmaker how I'm supposed to feel because there's 16 things hitting you at the same time. I just think that's so cool. And I find all your movies have very relatable characters. And in fact, I know this much is true. When that's the last drama, that's the last dramatic series I watched at night because I kept realizing I needed to watch material that goes to that place in the daylight. And so literally that's my routine now. It's really affected me because I just feel like whether it's Gosling in the portraits you've done with him or through Ruffalo or through Channing now, I just feel like maybe it's because we're kind of the same age and of the same generation and weird sculptures of characters that we're trying to portray. But like I find them all very much, I find me in all of them in a weird way. As an audience member, I think that's such a profound thing to be able to almost have a panic attack watching this movie because I love him and I feel bad for him, but I also think he's an asshole and he's doing horrible things, And so I guess I'm wondering, when you're interviewing, getting to know the real Jeff, you're simultaneously creating a character, and are you leaving things behind that make you like him less? Or if he says something that challenges your appreciation of him, do you lean into that and make that a part of that dynamic character?
I think I tried to put in everything. I feel like in real life, I've never met a hero and I've never met a villain. I feel like people are much more complicated or live in the gray area more often than that. I think Jeff as a character made some very, very huge mistakes for the right reasons. I think he was trying to be a provider to his family. He just didn't know how to do it. And he ended up robbing these McDonald's, but he was going to do it in a non-violent way. But what he didn't, his morals were that he was not going to hurt anyone. But of course I brought up, but maybe psychologically hurt them or emotionally hurt them.
Well, and that's what kills you when he punches the dude at the end. Yeah. You're like, don't cross that line with me.
Yeah. It's, so, and there was a moment, honestly, I didn't know if I was midway through doing my research. I was thinking, am I going to make like a movie about a sociopath? Is this going to be like Taxi Driver? And then I had these calls with Lee and with Ron, and I kind of assumed that they were going to be bitter, feel betrayed, be angry with Jeff. But they spoke of Jeff and the 3 months that they spent with him as like this golden moment in their lives, where this unicorn or this fish with wings showed up, this thing that they had never seen before, this magical person came into their lives, and they had so much appreciation and love and were so thankful for the time that they had spent with him. And that last scene in the film with Lee is pretty much exactly as it had happened in real life. And as I was trying to understand from them how they could feel that way, I asked Pastor Ron. I said, I was just talking to him about the Bible one day, and I said, "Tell me, just teach me whatever. Just tell me about how you read the Bible." And he's like, "Well, there's the Old Testament. That's all about judgment, God's judgment, and the New Testament's all about grace." And he said, in his life, he tries to err on the side of grace. And it made me think about Jeff's story and thinking that society had judged this guy pretty harshly, and sentenced him to 45 years. And the judge that sentenced him is in our movie. She plays the prosecutor. She doesn't have any lines, but she's in the movie. And I thought that he was serving his time, and that maybe the movie could see him with a little bit of grace and see the humanity in him. And I think what was interesting is like, for as big as those mistakes that he made, Lee and Ron's forgiveness of him was just as big. And that's what kind of inspired me, was their forgiveness.
It's cool. And knowing that it's true, it's inspired by true events. Like when you're on set, I mean, do you rehearse this formally? Do you let it be organic and let Channing do his antics at the Toys R Us? Like how much of this is like preconceived versus a skeleton and a sculpture that's going to be organic on the day?
Well, it's, 30 something drafts of a script, all this research. I am scared. I'm terrified of rehearsals, because have you ever had this happen where you get it in the rehearsal?
Where you get it?
Well, you get the scene, and then you get the camera, and then you can never get back to that expectation. Yeah. I feel like expectations as a filmmaker are my enemy. So what I try to do is just be prepared. Yeah. And so it's part of the, for the Blue Valentine, it took me 12 years to make that movie. And in that time, I had made a student feature called Brother Tide. It went to Sundance. It never got sold. And when your movies don't get sold, no one's like ready to give you more money. So I sat on the bench for 12 years, and I was just writing Blue Valentine every 3 months, just rewriting it and hoping that somehow I came up with the key, and I would watch it in my head every day. And then I started doing documentaries while I was trying to make Blue Valentine. And there was this image of Cecil B. DeMille, of like the director with the megaphone telling people what to do. And when I was making docs, that wasn't feasible. It wasn't realistic. That wasn't how I could work. I felt like that megaphone became like a listening device with which to funnel the world and to listen, to people more. Because if I did an interview with someone, they could answer a question in a way that I didn't necessarily expect, or they would walk into a room and they would sit at a chair that was maybe in poor lighting, or maybe the chair would break. And so I just kind of got obsessed with real life and the speed of real life and the chaos. And I really think that, so writing a script to me is all about control and possibility, but then being on set is about embracing that chaos. So for this movie, one of the reasons I went down to North Carolina to shoot it in Charlotte, which was very hard because it was, the tax credit wasn't as good. There was a lot of people trying to convince me to go to South Africa because we could do the whole thing. But I was like, well, there's no people there. Like, where am I going to find the people? And so anyway, so we, had to build that Toys R Us from basic. It was in a shell of a Toys R Us. We had to put in all the floor tile. We had to put in 2,000 fluorescent lights. We had to put in all the, my production designer, Imbal Weinberg, she had to put in all the shelving. She had to put in all the toys and like many toys deep. And they had to be period toys like those Elmos. And it's remarkable, like how many toys it takes to fill up a Toys R Us. We were having like truckloads and truckloads of toys arriving every day. And, there was some questions like, why do we have, like, can't we just know? Like, I remember Imbal saying, like, if you just told me what we were going to shoot, we would know, and I wouldn't have to do this whole store. And Imbal and I have worked together a lot. And I was like, how we work. I was like, I want to create an aquarium for my actors. And I want to be able to drop them in that aquarium. And I want them to be able to explore and play. And it's one of the things I promised Channing. I said, I'm going to let you have a toy store. And so what eventually happens then is, you have a script that you find, but then all these other little magic things start happening. Okay, so the real Jeff, he called me a couple weeks ago and he said he had seen the movie poster because he can't see the movie. He's in a max security prison. He hasn't had an orange in 20 years, so I can't get him the movie. He told me, he was like, hey, I saw the poster for the movie. And he was like, it was like a picture of Channing in a pair of Heelys with his underwear and a pool floaty and like a teddy bear around his neck with sunglasses on. And he was like, where'd you get that idea? And I was like, well, I built the toy store and I was setting up a shot and Channing just came around the corner and he looked like that. So I filmed him. And he said, that makes me really happy because if you live in a toy store for 6 months, it has a way to bring out your inner child. And he was like, I'm really happy Channing got in touch with his.
That's cool. I love that. Yeah. In letting it loose and having that kind of freedom on the day, I find, in my experience, is just the greatest when you see it all come together and you see that connection. I'm wondering if, specifically looking at like the church brunch scene, are you shooting multiple cameras? How are you allowing yourself to let everyone loose and film a scene that achieves that type of naturalism? What's the trick to overlapping dialogue and creating a world that your editors don't roll their eyes when you throw them all the dailies that are so terrific?
Well, it's my editors that I've been working with for every movie. And so
There's two of them, editors,
Jim Helton and Ron Patain. They are, we all kind of developed our process together. So they know what I'm going to give them. For the church scene, I'm shooting 2 cameras in there. And I have, when you unleash Ben Mendelsohn in the world.
I imagine he doesn't do the same thing twice.
No. And thankfully, like I love script supervisors. They don't always have a role on my movies because I like continuity error. I embrace the continuity errors. I don't want actors to hit marks. I am fine with it being different every take because I'm only looking for it once. I feel like the concept for me is Halley's Comet. Halley's Comet comes like once every 77 years. And if when the time comes, you have to go and see it. It has to be there and you capture it and then if you don't get it, you have to wait 77 years for it to come back. So I just try to put myself in a position to capture these, what I call Halley's Comet moments. And then you can't get them back. There's no take 2 on them. And so sometimes I'll move on after one take. I do that a lot for actors just so they know it's possible. But sometimes we'll do, my record's 96 takes.
Wow.
If we need to make sure we find something that feels fresh. Because for me, like I learned this on Blue Valentine, is like I watch the movie in my head every day as like a practice. I try to visualize it. And so by the time I'm on set, I've seen a movie. And so I want to be surprised. I want to see something new. And when you have great actors, I would be foolish, right, to try to box them in. And so I get a lot of messiness, but I live for that. I live for the chaos on set.
I love to hear that. I feel the same way. Okay, so fast forward. So you shot the movie. You've got a cut of the movie. Talk about that editing process. You've got 2 editors. You guys are sitting in a dark room or multiple rooms and figuring it out. And then how much of your considerations from the preconception of who these characters were and what the respect to the true life figures, how that translates to your own specific creation, translates to an audience? Like, how much are you weighing all of those interests in your editorial process?
Well, we don't do assemblies. I've looked at an assembly one time and it just freaked me out. It's like delusion is important, right? You have to remain delusional when you make something, because once you lose your delusion, then reality is too tough. So you have to stay a little delusional. So one of the ways I do that is we just go through and watch every inch we basically memorize the footage, watch it over and over and over again. And then we just edit one scene at, every moment, every scene at a time, and just try to find what those scenes are and then put it all together. In that process, I like editing in like a house, where we have like meals together and it creates like another family atmosphere. And it's, Jim and Ron, I'm so tight with them and we know each other so well. And I'll just go back and forth between Jim's room and Ron's room. And eventually we'll stitch everything together. And that's like, I think we had our first cut like at 13 weeks and it was about 3 hours long and we sat and watched it together. And I mean, editing's intense. Mm-hmm. Editing is an intense thing.
Especially for a movie like this, where the high wire act is the tone of it. Yeah. So if you go too satirical or spoofy or silly, then you're not going to get the integrity that is calling to you. Or if you lean one way for handing the audience something, what that line of too much exposition, or hey, maybe if we threw a couple of expository things in the voiceover, then 20% more people will understand some plot point. Those types of things freak the out of me.
It's crazy. I was thinking to myself in the edit, I was like, man, making a movie is like building a boat. And, you could build a little sailboat, or you could build a rowboat, or you could build like a oil tanker, or you could build like a boat with like 10,000 rooms and 4 smokestacks, and then convince everyone that this is going to be the boat. And then you make the boat. And then all of a sudden in the edit, you find yourself in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean at night and you've made the Titanic. And somehow you have to like stay alive. Somehow you have to survive it. Editing is so intense. And all those moments, I used to always say that writing is dreaming, shooting is living, and editing is murder. And that's because all these beautiful moments you get with these actors, you have to let them go. And the best time that the moment I'm living for in the editing room is when the movie. It's the same when I'm writing. It's when the character starts speaking for you on the page, or in the edit when the movie just starts telling you what it is and what it needs to be. I just think it's about staring at it and memorizing it, and pretty soon it just, I don't know, it rises.
It rises, but then you show it to, start with the friends and family, and your body starts reacting to things.
And
right?
I try to screen the movie. I was screening this movie once a week, so I think I screened it like 20 times for people. And I do that because because of that feeling in your body. I had a friend once that made a movie and he wouldn't show it to me. And I was like, show me your movie. And he wouldn't. And he was protecting it. And the first time he showed it was in front of a major audience. And that's just too much pressure. That's too much pressure on you and your movie. You can become, blind. You can believe it, like that delusion is important, but then that reality of like showing it to an audience is important. I feel like it's like going to church. It's like you can pray alone, but when you go to church, you can feel the spirit of everyone. And so whenever one of the reasons I screen the movie for people so much in a room, in a theater, is just to feel it. It's not necessarily to listen to what their notes or their thoughts are. It's just, I can see the movie when I see it in a screening room with people. I can just know where it's working and where it's not, and where the thing that I think I'm saying is coming through, and where it's making sense, and where it's, Anyway,
And how much does it change? I mean, from your first cut where you finally took a sigh of relief and said, okay, the movie is starting to become the movie, does it change drastically? Or?
Well, I mean, I cut an hour out of the movie. Okay. It's the same movie. Yeah. It just got tightened and tonally shifted, and the themes just got, turned, nuanced, tuned up. This movie was always going to be a little bit challenging because it has a very funky structure. The first act is all about him trying to provide for his original family. And this kind of mirrored my conversations with the real Jeff. For like the first couple years I was talking to him, I was just thinking, okay, and your family. And then like, what was your plan with your family? And then he would say, well, I was going to go, if I could get to Venezuela, they could come see me. And I was like, but wait, how could they come see you in Venezuela? When your ex-wife was so angry at you, like how were you going to see, what sense does it make you go to Venezuela to see your kids? And I realized what he realized, that once you get sentenced to 45 years, you have no agency about being a father anymore. And so it was this really funky structure to like build up this first family, and then to experience what Jeff had to experience was that true tragedy of his life when he couldn't go back. And the Elmo scene that you mentioned, like, actually happened. That was, he talked a lot about being in that Toys R Us and having it be like the Garden of Eden. And then when his friend Steve disappeared on him and he realized he got sentenced to another 6 months in that toy store, it turned into the Garden of Hell. It turned into another incarceration for him. And that's when he started losing his mind and hitting the Elmos. But anyway, that structure it was a tough structure to kind of land in the pace of the film. And we always knew it because it was always like that in the script, but it was the truth to his story. But one thing that happened was this time frame. The movie kind of takes place over holidays. It starts Father's Day, and then it's Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas. And the editing and the montage, we shot all those scenes, and then in the edit we had to make it kind of flow as like a memory of time. But I've done that in a lot of my movies. There's a lot of montage moments where time kind of passes for the people, and I think it just speaks to, I don't know, I just feel like I just get super ambitious when I'm shooting. I want to get more and more and more.
Well, that's so fun watching the movie because you see those montages and you'll have an image that just fleets right by and you wanted to linger longer, or even there was just there's one shot where he's on a payphone and it just lingers on this. He's leaning into the payphone, and just like the way that kind of emotion is told through time and these images, these compositions, some that really kind of seem mundane at first, and then you stare at them and they become really powerful. So I really applaud all that. And I think we have time for one more question. I was just going to ask about the music, which I thought it was such a timeless composition that you could have told me that was stolen from the 40s or the 60s or the 80s. Like, it just felt like something that felt emotional and let you smile through it. So it had a real character to it. And I was just wondering what your influences or inspirations there were.
Well, I work with my music supervisor is a guy named Matt Kalman. He used to be my driver. He was because I direct commercials, like as my day job is a way to basically make money. So I don't have to make a living as a feature film director. Yeah, basically I don't have to but by directing commercials, I can do whatever I want on the screen. So anyway, he was my driver, and usually people that drove me around on commercial shoots, the first thing I would do is like change their music and, hook up my phone to Bluetooth. But with Matt, I just always listened to his music. It was just always so good. I found myself like always Shazamming it. And he turns out he's a rock star. He's a keyboardist in that band Real Estate. Uh-huh. And I was like, why are you doing this? Why are you driving me around? And he was like, I need health insurance. And I was like, well, there's got to be a better way. And he was like, well, I'd always thought I could be a music supervisor. So I was like, okay, that's it. That's your new job. That'll be your day job now. And so I always send him all my scripts, and he sends me like playlists. And
so cool.
Yeah, it's really fortunate. And there was this artist named Rachel Grimes that he sent me. She has this album called Marion County. She scored like a silent movie or like a home movie from like the 1930s. It's a beautiful, beautiful album. And that's what I used on set. So Channing's a dancer, right? And very first day of shooting with him, I was trying to find that tone with him. I was trying to find a way to communicate this tone that was like this sad clown tone. And we were doing the scene of him like running through the field. And it felt very like militaristic, like his running. And I was like, we've got to find like a different way to run here. I didn't know how to communicate it to him. I was really failing as a director. And then I was like, okay, this guy's a dancer. So I played him the song by Rachel Grimes, and he was like, oh, okay, I got it. And so she was like our North Star on set. We shot everything with her. And then when it came down to do the score of the movie, I was feeling this reunion vibe, and I reached out to Chris Bear because I know he's just like a savant and he can do anything. And, I played for him some of the Rachel music. And the thing is, like, the Rachel music wasn't going to work in the bigger film because I needed something that had some continuity throughout the whole movie. And Chris was able to kind of take that same spirit. And I mean, it was like this movie was nostalgic, it was about a time in America, like before cell phones. It was a time when the big box stores where families would get together and go shopping. Now they do it on Amazon. And I kind of wanted to just embrace that nostalgia. It's one of the, I don't want to say shooting on film is nostalgic, but it did allow us to, shoot on 35, which like just made it feel like it was a film made in that time. And Chris was able to kind of make this score that had that sense of nostalgia.
That's cool. Well, it felt beautiful to me. And I just we have to wrap it up, but I want to thank you for making a movie that's complex, atmospheric, and emotional and entertaining. All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And please share, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America.